Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome here again to our weekly Box Hangout. And today we're supposed to be speaking to some of the organizers from the October 6th march that happened across different campuses last week, Tuesday, on the 6th of March. That was dedicated of 6th of October. Thank you. This is why I have my editor here today. That happened to talk about outsourcing and why it's to call the universities, especially Wits and UJ, on outsourcing and why outsourcing is wrong. Unfortunately, due to technical glitches, they couldn't join us today, but they'll be joining us next week. So today I'll be hosting the Daily Box executive editor, Ms. Khadija Patel, and we will be talking about some of the things that have made headlines in this two-day week that we've had. We've had lots of things that have made headlines, and we'll also talk about stuff from last week, such as the fact that Fox News said that Mayfair and Fordsburg are no-go areas for non-Muslims, yet here we are going live in Mayfair. Welcome, Khadija.
Thank you very much, Pontsho.
So let's talk about Fox News and their very, very dramatic statements. Mm-hmm. You wrote a column about it.
Yeah,
and why did you want to write a column about it?
I felt that there were a number of claims made in that piece of reporting that needed to be challenged. Some of it was just outright false. Some of it was severely distorted. And I thought that it was important that we set the record straight.
What are some of these views that you found to be untrue and some we found to be distorted?
So the reporter, uses the fact that a number of South Africans have traveled to Syria to join the Islamic State. Yeah. But he claims that the majority of people who've traveled from South Africa are from this area, from Mayfair and Fordsburg. So Azad Isa and I have actually worked on investigations regarding this, and we know for a fact that this is absolutely false.
Yeah.
To start with.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think? Well, I have my own opinion on why Fox would find this true. But in your opinion, why do you think it's Fox News saying this? How does this agenda serve them and their agenda?
I say this in the piece that I wrote rebutting that report, was that he seemed to arrive here with a ready-made conclusion already, that he already knew what he wanted to find here, or he had already made up his mind about what was going on here, and he just found anything to support his conclusions.
No, I totally agree. When I was reading his piece before I read your piece, for me it's the outright Islamophobia, for a lack of a better word, because there is no other word to explain it. That is wrapped up in causes of concern about ISIS and all these things. That for me is often used by people, Islamophobes, to say, oh, but why did the lady from the Westgate shootings? Why was she in Mayfair? Why did she find Mayfair as home? As if that justifies.
Exactly.
And
this is what I challenge him on, is that even when I challenged his assertions on Twitter, he kept coming back to the white widow, the so-called white widow, Samantha Luckett, who lived in Mayfair for some years. And he uses he concedes to every point that I make, every challenge that I make regarding it, but he keeps coming back to Samantha Luckett. And he seems to believe that the fact that Luckett lived here for a number of years is proof that this is some kind of hotbed of terrorism. So on the basis of one woman's residence here, he has tainted an entire community. Which, besides being very unfair, is rather racist as well. Because and I think that there's a lot of racism also that underpinned his reporting here.
Yeah, and talking about racism, do you think the reason that he keeps on going back to Samantha is the fact that Samantha is a white woman who has found her religion or her spirituality in Islam, and as a white person himself, is there a threat that, how people feel about Islam a lot of the times, that it's taking over. I mean, if you've watched Fox News or any reports Fox News has had about anything related to Islam, it's always really this moral panic about the Muslims are taking over. So when I read his piece, a lot of what was coming up was that same moral panic, especially because Samantha is a white woman who is generally supposed to be, or stereotypically supposed to be born into a Christian household or a non-religious household. And now here she is saying that Islam is her choice of religion. Do you think that had anything, her race particularly, had anything to do with this moral panic that existed around Mayfair?
I think that a lot of the reports about Samantha Luckett that came out after the Westgate bombings, particularly fixated a lot on the fact that she was a white British woman.
Yeah.
And there was some kind of almost fetishization of her. And I've written about this for the Daily Maverick, who I was working for at the time. Is that when you read a lot of the reportage that is coming out regarding her alleged involvement in planning the bombing or whatever participation of the shootings, what you always found these references to the fact that houses that she was believed to have lived in, when they were searched afterwards, they found lingerie there. So there was this, and there was always references to the number of men that she's married. So there is this kind of fetishization of her as a white woman who has been lured into this, Oriental space of Islam, of militant Islam.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so I mean, I can't say how much that kind of fetishization informed this Fox News reporter, but I mean, I've seen it previously in other reporting about her.
Okay. Let's now move on to this past weekend's NGC.
Very, very interesting.
Very, very important conference. I mean, we found out that the ANC wants to call for South Africa to be removed from the ICC, which for me should be the dominating thing. But unfortunately, because of, I don't know if it's social media or people, the most talked about thing from the NGC is the fact that President Jacob Zuma could not say a number again. And it's been shared all over Facebook, all over Twitter, even on WhatsApp groups. People are sending us these videos. What are your thoughts on that? On the fact that this very important conference happened over the weekend, talking about something as big as, I mean, human rights. I mean, we're talking removing, like covering potential terrorists or human rights violators. Yet what we as South Africans are talking about is the fact that our president could not say a number.
It really is, I think, first of all, proof that the general public do not find these kinds of policy discussions to be very interesting, first of all. That we saw a lot of excitement among journalists who were covering the conference over the weekend. It is really, almost like, like a dream weekend for journalists who are political journalists in South Africa. They get the most out of this. But I think that, again, it's something perhaps we can talk about later. Is why don't other people then find it that interesting, or who is finding it interesting? How are we not telling these stories properly enough for people to be taking note of this? And then, the fact that clip of President Zuma being unable to read a number, is gone viral again. It's not the first time this has happened. He clearly has problems reading out numbers like
and
that.
Big numbers.
Yeah, and I mean, you'd expect that by now his speechwriters would just write it out in words instead of dumping a clump of numbers there. But clearly, that hasn't happened. But I think that, again, Pontsho, like you say, we have to interrogate why this has captured the attention of so many people. I think that it's very easy to laugh at President Zuma.
Why do you think, so you're saying it's easy to laugh at him, why do you think it's easy?
Because he is the stereotypical, he's been made out to be this stereotypical backward black man.
That's true.
And these kinds of things serve to reinforce that idea of him as being fundamentally uneducated and thus unable to lead South Africa.
No, that's quite true. Talking about this general narrative that exists in the public about President Jacob Zuma, a couple of months ago on Facebook and on Twitter this picture of President Jacob Zuma in his traditional regalia, in his mbesho, and like I think it was one of his traditional wedding ceremonies taken. So he's dancing during the Zulu traditional dance there with and with one of his wives and the other ones in the background. And then below that is a picture of the DA's Musi Maimane with his wife, who is white, by the way. And then there are comments saying things like, this is what a real president looks like. One who's not married to many women, and one who dresses appropriately, and one who's not, basically they were saying, and one who's not a savage, and one who's in a suit, who has the right accent, who is married to the right kind of woman, and only one woman. And there was this very, very clear picture that the people, and a lot of DA supporters actually shared that picture, which was, for me, was very telling.
Shared,
for me, it was very telling what the people that are within the DA think about Black culture, and people that unapologetically practice that, right?
Yeah.
And so it's linked back to what you're saying about how President Jacob Zuma is often portrayed as the epitome of what a Black man should not be and what this country does not need.
Yes.
I mean, we could even link this up to Ayanda Mabula's very disturbing.
Ooh, let's not go there.
So for me, I don't even know where to begin with that painting.
Have you seen it?
No, I saw it. Obviously, it's been shared everywhere, and I saw it, but I've chosen not to consume it or to give it attention. Firstly,
why do you think it's getting that much of attention?
Because so it's getting a lot of attention because obviously we had this fear a couple of years ago where there was a lot of outrage from the ANC and from the general public about how President Jacob Zuma is being portrayed by this artist and everything. Why does his genitalia always get attention from people called artists?
It comes back to this sort of fixation again on his sexuality.
Yes, because he is in a polygamous marriage. I do not think if Jacob Zuma was married to one woman, we would be so fixated with his sexuality as a people.
It doesn't inform the trope again of the
savage Black man,
yes, exactly.
Who sex hungry and goes everywhere looking for sex. And I think for me that's why I refuse to engage that painting on any intellectual level, and also the portrayal of the Black woman being raped.
People are going to listen to you now and say, "Yep, it's because you're an ANC supporter. That's why you have these kinds of opinions." And how would you respond to that?
So it's beyond that, It's for me, it's beyond just being an ANC supporter or being a supporter of any political party. Another thing is the portrayal and the depiction of women. Why is a woman being raped? Why is in a country that has so much gender-based violence and sexual violence against women? Why is an artist thinking it is appropriate to draw a picture of a woman being raped in this country, in the context of the plight that women are in this country? I mean, just yesterday on Twitter was in a standstill the whole day because one of the most well-known celebs, as we call them, Twitter celebrities, his girlfriend ousted him on Twitter, saying that Black Twitter's got zero chill. No, I'm happy. It was a dark day. And you saw how many stories, like I went through the timeline in the evening. So many other women saying, no, my ex-boyfriend locked me in the boot of his car and left me there.
And these are serious allegations.
One lady talked about how her father used to run boiling water into a bathtub and then punish the mother by putting her in boiling water. And so for me, it was really disturbing. It was very, very heavy, some of the things that were being shared. But I'm so glad that the internet could be a space where some of the women who were sharing these things were like, it's the first time I've actually publicly talked about these things. So firstly, it shows that it's not just Twitter. Secondly, linking this back to the Zuma painting and the depiction of a woman being raped. Is it really the kind of images that we want to produce and call it freedom of expression, or showing that this country is really being raped by Zuma and the ANC? why is it that we choose to use the word rape to describe corruption when a lot of the times the actual incident where it is actually rape on Black women, young Black girls, women in general, actually, we don't want to use the word rape. We will call it sexual harassment, or it will be dismissed. So for me, it talks to a deeper issues beyond just President Zuma himself, just how blind Ayanda was to draw that and not think about
certain people. Then are also going to say that this is the job of art. It's to make us uncomfortable. It's supposed to be pushing the boundaries, and then if it's making us uncomfortable, then it's doing its job as sort of like a social commentary.
You know what? It's just last year when we had the Human Zoo exhibition, right? That was supposedly art, and that was supposedly pushing boundaries. But just because people, artists are pushing boundaries, can we not question them or hold them to account and problematize or contextualize their work in the country that we live in? I don't think that we should just say, oh, it's art, I feel uncomfortable, therefore it's right. I think we should actually deconstruct it and say, if people agree with it, yeah, if people don't, that's great as well. But for me, another...
sorry, I'm cutting you.
Yeah, no problem.
So, I mean, we're talking about Zuma, representations of Zuma, representations of Black men, really. So then, how then do we contextualize Trevor Noah's sketch the other day about Donald Trump and being more worthy of being a president of an African state? So I mean, how do we? Yes, Trevor Noah, a Black South African man, but then largely American women, making this joke.
So I think Trevor can make that joke at home, like doing Daywalker 1 and 2. It's funny, it really, I think there is, because we are laughing at ourselves, but to go on on American television with some of the stereotypes Americans or the West has about Africa.
Exactly, it fed into a lot of
it fed into, because those, like a lot of the people, I mean, people just a few months ago, people were angry at the fact that John Stewart chose an African man to take over. Yeah. We will never forget what happened to Trevor himself. And so for that to happen, for him now to be in this position and to feed into these stereotypes on that level, I wasn't very pleased about that, because I think he was not aware. It's still funny to us, and it's still funny in general, but he wasn't aware of the context in which he was saying these jokes.
I didn't find it funny at all. I just thought it was crass.
I think if he said it during a show at the Lyric Theatre, I'd laugh.
Yeah.
But not on the Daily Show. And I think this then goes to question, who really are his writers? I mean, there was a big hype about that some of Africa's top comedians are writing for him, like David Kabuka and the likes. But are they the ones that are writing these things? A lot of the times, these very comedians have talked about wanting to change the narrative about Africa. But here they are now on a global platform and feeding into the stereotypes about Africa. What are we saying? Were they just saying that so that they could get a seat at the table, and now that they finally really arrived, they're now like, whatever, they're just gonna do what they have to do to get like more famous or whatever. So it questions a lot of things. It questions, are they selling out? I don't know. I think to keep on watching him for a month, that's a lot to ask for.
I think that for me, it was Trevor and perhaps the team behind him, his production team and writing team, who want to always connect the fact that he is
from South Africa. Yeah,
they want to make that relevant to the comedy that he's offering.
Yeah.
But it just came across really badly.
No.
It didn't work for me.
No, it didn't. But like I said, I think we should give Trevor a chance, and he is really doing. I mean, that's a big platform, and let's give him a month or two. And I think Black Twitter will call him out when he needs to be called out.
Black Twitter, yesterday really was a big day on Black
No, it was, you know, I remember after Ruth's first lecture, you tweeted this was a watershed moment. And I sat there and I was like, yes, 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 you know. And it was a watershed moment simply because there were firstly 2 Black women on that stage and telling their truths the way their truths are, unapologetically so. And I think this year, the latter part of 2015 has shown Black women just really saying, you know, we're tired of everything, and people just standing in solidarity with the student movements and everything. Like, Black people are just tired, and specifically Black women are really, really just tired. They're tired of the whiteness and the white privilege, and they're also tired of the Black patriarchy. And so yesterday, I think for me, was another watershed moment where, you know, I mean, for somebody to be ousted on violence, and for people to band together and say, go to the police, please put a restraining order against this guy, and then teach his employees. I mean, 5 of them this morning announced that he's been suspended from work. No, I think that shows that it's really not just Twitter, and that the things that we do online do, like, actually have an impact on our lives, in a real world impact. But also, we should also be cognizant of the fact that, I mean, the people, the Black people, or just the people on Twitter in general in South Africa are very small. So what about the girl who will never know what Twitter is, never have a smartphone, and can't treat her abuser or her rapist? What about her? So how do we then take the collective and the ideas and the principles that this community online has built, and then take it out into the real world? I mean, somebody tweeted, it took Black Twitter 8 hours to do what 16 days of activism cannot do on a big budget. So what is it that the people in leadership that are not getting right, that people online could get right?
So does it come, so when we start not talking about the ANC NDC this weekend, does it just come down to messaging, poor messaging?
It's not just pure messaging. I think it's also the agenda that is being served. I mean, last year we did stories about how Susan Shabangu is just so problematic. She's the Minister of Women, right? And she sat at an event. I think it was the launch of 16 Days of Activism, and a chief of one of the villages in Mpumalanga was speaking and saying women must know their place and they shouldn't. Feminism is an African, and she was nodding. And she was nodding, and she was saying things like, men need to protect women. Instead of saying, men need to stop raping women, men need to stop abusing women. You understand? So it's not just the language, it's the mentality that exists behind that logic. If you think it is okay to sit there as the minister responsible for this portfolio that is supposedly protecting women and say those things, I'm concerned as a woman in this country. You know, and so I think it goes. I think it's political, it's ideological as well. Maybe we should talk about feminism and activism, gender activism in a different language, so that our elders do understand it. But I think yesterday should be a moment that leadership looks at and says, what can we do differently? What is it that needs to be done? We have the resources, we have the power. What should we do? And I'd like to see something different happen come November, the end of November, and hopefully something does change. But our policies are not enough. Meetings about meetings and talks about talks, it's not enough anymore. And I think that is why something like what happened yesterday on Twitter happened, because people are saying they're tired of, you know, hearing things. They want action.
People need to feel a material change.
Yes.
And I think that's what's lacking, whether it is in our university spaces
exactly.
or elsewhere, in our workplaces.
Exactly.
People are really, I think, frustrated with the lack of material change, real life change, and there is this restlessness, I think.
No, definitely, I agree with you. But we are out of time, and this has been such a fascinating discussion. We should have these maybe once a month.
We should.
And ladies and gentlemen, this was Khadija Patel, the executive producer of editor. Yes, thinking this is a talk show now, Oprah. This is the executive editor of the Daily Vox, and from us, we just wanted to tell you about our campaign Why Our Vox. Please send us a tweet, an email about why you support the Daily Vox with a picture of yourself and just a few lines on why you think the Daily Vox is something that is needed in the media space in South Africa, and we will tweet it out and share. And also, you can donate on our Indiegogo.
That's the most important part.
You can donate on our Indiegogo campaign. You donate $15,
Yes,
which is about 200 rand, so that we can still be here next year and do more hangouts and talk about more interesting things and produce more student journalists and everything. So from me to you, I'll see you next week when we talk to the October 6th organizers about outsourcing, and hopefully their technical glitches will be solved. But otherwise, we will be bringing you something interesting yet again next week. Tweet us with the hashtag VoxHangout. Till next week, bye.